want to welcome everybody as I,
Yeah.
um, first of all, thank you all for being here on Yom HaShoah. Um, a, a day that's always important, but seems to sort of carry with it right now um, a little more gravity um, than maybe we afford it normally. And I hope all of you, have been able to observe this time in a thoughtful way, but it was uh, it felt very fortuitous to me, that both Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron coincide with our ALI study days, and was very really like honored that Mike was available to be our presenter both weeks. So um, I'm, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rabbi Marcia Tilchin. I'm the founder of the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, and we are the host for this weekly session of learning. Various teachers from around the country join us every Monday for semesters of learning. Our April classes with David Lazar on the evolution of Passover from how Christianity sort of changed and adopted Passover for its own theological purposes was really quite wonderful. And we're in the process of scheduling June, July, and August. So stay tuned for our upcoming programs. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Reverend Mike.
Rabbi Mike, you're muted.
Thank you. Sylvia is always keeping on top of everything. Thank you, Rabbi Tilchin. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. It's really wonderful to be here. This is really the third segment, starting from the first Jew nearly 4,000 years ago. And today we're going to end at the establishment of the State of Israel. Because it's Yom HaShoah, we're also going to include an element of Yom HaShoah in it. Just because it happens during this period that I'm going to cover. I basically am going to cover the period of 1880 to 1948. Quite a bit happened. Obviously, I'm going to deal with some of the highlights of this period that contributed to the establishment of the third Commonwealth of the State of Israel. Just because it's a third segment, I'd like to take a few minutes just to kind of give a very quick summary of what happened previously when we discussed the things that happened between the first Jew and about the destruction of the Second Temple and then to the period that we're going to cover today. So after Moses and Joshua, the Jews were basically, the Israelites were ruled by judges and prophets. When the people came to Samuel and they say, we want a king, like all the other nations around us. And Samuel said, no, you really don't want it. It's going to do this. He's going to do that. They insisted they want a king. So Samuel appointed King Saul as the king of Israel. At that moment, the first Commonwealth of Israel was established. We don't really know, because the Bible doesn't tell us, how long King Saul ruled, but most experts agree that it's about 20 years, based upon the chain of events described. We know that after that there was King David, and after that there was King Solomon, each of them about 40 years. So now about 100 years later, King Solomon is dead. His son Rehavam becomes the king. His son was not as smart as his dad, was not a good politician like his dad, was taking advice from young advisors instead of the seasoned and more experienced advisors his dad used. And so he got himself a revolt on his head. Someone named Yerovam revolted against King Rehoboam. And when all the dust settled, the first Commonwealth of Israel ceased to exist. Instead, there were two kingdoms. The kingdom of Judah, that included the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and then the kingdom of Israel. Some people refer to it as the northern kingdom, that included the other 10 tribes. We, are descendants of the kingdom of Judah. Judaism. What happened with the kingdom of Israel? About the year 722 before the Common Era, so roughly 200 years after the kingdom of Israel was established, the Assyrian Empire, Ashur in biblical words, invaded the kingdom of Israel because it was very attractive. The kingdom of Judah was in the mountain, landlocked, not very attractive. The kingdom of Israel sat on fertile land, sat on the bridge between Europe, Asia, and Africa, sat along the Mediterranean Sea, which is the seafaring, the Phoenician route. So it was very attractive. The Assyrian occupied it. They killed many and they exiled the rest. By exiling them, they will be less inclined to practice Judaism because at the time, Judaism was all about pilgrimage and sacrifice. They'll be somewhere far, no place to go bring sacrifices. Judaism will disappear. And that's what happened with those 10 tribes. We call them the lost tribes. Now we're going to fast forward to about the year 140 before the Common Era. The Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, the story of Hanukkah, managed to beat the Romans, and they establish a new commonwealth, the second commonwealth of Israel, and they start to rule. Hashmonaim were Cohens. Cohens are not supposed to be kings. They're supposed to be the Cohens. The kings come from the stock of David, King David. Nevertheless, there was a lot of back and forth going on between the people, but the Cohens, or the Hashmonaim dynasty, ruled until the year 37 before the Common Era, again, about 100 years, when the Roman appointed King Herod, the king of the Jews. It was actually by proclamation in the Senate in Rome, and there is record of it. They appointed him the king of the Jews. Interestingly enough, he was an Edomite, descendant of Esau. They considered themselves Jews. The rabbis did not. But since the Jews were not governing themselves anymore, but rather by someone appointed by the Roman, the second commonwealth ceased to exist. And then the year 70 of the Common Era came. The temple was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed, all the small community throughout the land of Israel were destroyed by the Roman. The people went into exile. The year 135 came and the Bar Kokhba revolt was crushed. They were winning initially. They even started to establish themselves as independent. They minted their own coins that have a star at the top. Bar Kokhba means son of star. The rabbis of the Talmud called him Bar Kusiba, son of lies, because he said that he's the Messiah. Interestingly enough, Rabbi Akiva, one of the giant of Judaism, Rabbi Akiva, was a follower of Bar Kokhba. So now Bar Kokhba revolt brings about the worst disaster that ever fell upon the Jews, except for the Holocaust, which we observe today. 600,000 Jews were killed by the Roman, and those that were left were exiled. Very few people remained on the land, in the land of Israel. So basically, the dream of establishing a new commonwealth of Israel, independent Israeli nation, kind of was diminishing by the moment, which about now brings us to where we are. I need to figure out how to bring the PowerPoint. There we go.
Let me know if I can help you, Mike.
Okay. Can everybody see the PowerPoint now? That's one that says modern Zionism.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So I'll put myself to the other side so I can see myself. And so essentially now the Jews live in exile. And all those years, from the year 70 until the time when I'm going to start this presentation, when modern Zionism began, that's Jews lived in exile. So they never forgot the land of Israel. They always prayed toward Jerusalem, and it was always on their mind. They prayed every day for it. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai kind of transformed the Judaism that we knew before the temple was destroyed, pilgrimage and sacrifice, into a religion of prayer and study. And so people were praying. In Hanukkah, during Passover, during Yom Kippur, they said next year in Jerusalem, right? They never forgot Jerusalem. I'm going to take a little side tour here and say there's a discussion in the Talmud about praying. And the rabbis are saying, wherever you are around the world, you pray toward Jerusalem. So here in the US, we pray east. If we were in Poland, we would pray in the direction of south. If we were in Iraq, we would pray west. If we were in South Africa, we would pray north. The bottom line is from everywhere around the world, you would pray in the direction of Jerusalem. If you are in Jerusalem, you will pray in the direction of the Temple Mount. If you are near the Temple Mount, say at the Western Wall, you will pray in the direction of the Holy of Holies, or where it used to be, right under what is the Dome of the Rock. And if you are inside the Holy of Holies, the high priest, you will pray into the space between the two angels that sits on top of the Mishkan. So I'm coming back now. So the biggest obstacle to the establishment of the new Commonwealth of Israel was the belief, based upon the teaching of the prophets, that state, that Commonwealth, that entity will be established when the Messiah comes. Messiah didn't come. The people just stayed put where they are. I want to take you back to the collection of story that Shalom Naumovich Rabinovich wrote. Most of us know him as Shalom Aleichem. He used a pen name because when he left home to study, he started to write short stories and sketches, and he didn't want his parents to know that he's doing it. So he adopted the name Shalom Aleichem, meaning peace be upon you. So there's a collection of stories and sketches. Hollywood took these collections and made a movie out of it called Fiddler on the Roof. Shalom Aleichem did not write a book named Fiddler on the Roof. Hollywood created it based upon his small stories and sketches. And in this collection of stories, there's a scene that always stuck in my mind. After a pogrom, the Jews have to leave, I think it's called Anatevka or something like that. It's a fictional shtetl, but it's really based upon a real shtetl that existed about 20 miles outside Kiev, the Ukraine. And after the pogrom, the Jews have to leave. And one of the students is telling the rabbi, wait, aren't we supposed to stay here and wait for the Messiah? And the rabbi said, we'll have to wait for him someplace else. And that's basically was the approach of Jews all around the world, mostly in Europe and the Arab countries, for about 1800 years. They had to wait for the Messiah before they can come back to the land of Israel. They kept praying. But the wind of change started to blow around the Russia under the control of the Tsar. The people there, young people mostly, didn't like the tyrannic rule of the Tsar. They wanted something different. Karl Marx offered them that something different in the form of socialism. Please don't confuse communism and socialism. Communism is like pseudo-socialism. It's really not. The communism as we knew it at the Soviet bloc or in Cuba is not really socialism that Karl Marx was teaching. Nevertheless, those young people across Russia and Eastern Europe wanted something different that socialism offered. And they decided they want to do something about it. Because of that mood and the change that they wanted to bring. It's one of the catalysts that brought about the establishment of the State of Israel. Jews were no longer willing to sit and wait and say next year in Jerusalem. They decided that it's time for us to get up, go there, and build the country, build a new state from the beginning. Not all the Orthodox rabbi agreed with it because they thought that that has to be done when the Messiah will come. But those mostly young people were not religious. They were not Orthodox by any stretch of their imagination. So they wanted something different. Let me see if I can go to the next. So now we're at 1878. Naftali Hertz Ingvar was from the Ukraine. He worked as a scholar in a part of Romania called Galicia. There was a large number of poets in Galicia, in that part of Romania, and he considered himself a poet, so he went over there. Much like artists nowadays will move to Laguna Beach or to San Francisco because there's a concentration of artists over there. He wrote a poem he called Atikva, the Hope. Just like one of many other poems that he wrote that describe basically the yearning of the Jewish people to return and to live in the land of Israel as independent land of Israel. Now let's go to 1881. There's major pogrom in Russia and the satellite countries around Russia, White Russia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Georgia, etc. And Jews are starting to live in really large numbers. In 1881, 40,000 Jews came to the land of Israel. Many more came to the US. In the next 40 years or so, as a result of a number of big pogroms that happened across Eastern Europe, 100,000 Jews came to the land of Israel, and 2 million Jews came to the shore of the US. Those people that came to the land of Israel, those 100,000, started to establish kibbutzim and moshavim based upon the teaching of Karl Marx. Kibbutz is the ultimate socialism. Used to be, it's not so much anymore, but in the original form, the kibbutz is the ultimate of socialism. You own every part of the kibbutz and you own nothing really. If you decide you need some money, you go to the office, you open the desk, and you take some money that you need, and you wrote, Mike took 25 shekels. You want to use the car, you just go, the keys are inside, start it and drive. Everything is yours. But if you leave with nothing, because nothing really is yours. That's how they did it. Moshavim is similar, but not exactly the same. It's independent people with common goal. So those Jews that came, those 100,000 Jews, along with some Jews that came from other places, like from New York City. The person that was the primary force behind establishing Tel Aviv came from New York City. He built it initially, just like New York City, with avenues and streets. He did make one big mistake. He did not make the major avenues in the direction of the breeze. He wanted more people along the seashore, so less air coming through Tel Aviv, old Tel Aviv that Dizengoff established. But places like Rishon LeZion, places like Petach Tikva, where I was born, places like Tel Aviv, kibbutzim throughout the countries started to be established by those 100,000 Jews and some of the Jews that already lived in the land of Israel. There was never a time the Jews did not live in the land of Israel. And now we jump to, I still left that PowerPoint of Naftali Hertz Inbar, because in 1887, Naftali Hertz Inbar is already living in Israel. And there's a musical night. And on this musical night, when the time comes for a young man, 17-year-old called Shmuel Cohen, to sing, he takes the word of this poem that Hinbar wrote. He adapts an old Romanian song with some variation in the melody, and he sings the word of the poem to this old song with slight variation. Thank God there was nobody from Netflix or YouTube over there to offer him a contract, because that became a big hit in the room. And quickly in the Yishuv, the pre-independent Israel organization that managed the land of Israel essentially. And very quickly people realized this can be the national anthem of the Yishuv, the pre-independent Israel. This music, the hope that became the national anthem of the Yishuv, later became the national anthem of Israel. And it was sent also to all parts of the world where Jews live. And it started to wake up a lot of Jews. They decided, wow, it's more than just yearning now. It's more than just saying next year in Jerusalem. Maybe we need to get up and move. It's probably what brought 100,000 Jews from Russia into Israel, and Jews from Ukraine and Poland and Lithuania and other places into Israel, from New York into Israel. Free, independent Israel, mind you. Golda Meir was one of them. Although she was born in the former Soviet Union, she came as a child to Milwaukee, where she went to school, where she was, I believe, a teacher. But then she came to the land of Israel. She said at one point, one of the things that made her want to move to Israel was Atikva, the national anthem of the Yishuv, this yearning to be independent. And then something big happened in 1894, the trial of Alfred Dreyfus, a French officer, Jewish, that was tried for treason. Theodor Herzl, Dr. Theodor Herzl, was working for a newspaper in Vienna. He covered this trial, and he came to realize that even in France, a country where Jews practically had complete freedom for 100 years at that point, they were still at the whim of the people, the government. They would never be free, truly free, unless they would be in their own country. And so Herzl left that trial, went back to Vienna, where he came from, and wrote a book. He called it The Jewish State. He also convened the first Jewish Congress in Basel, Switzerland. 200 delegates from 19 countries came. Very few Orthodox, but some were Orthodox, mostly secular Jews came. And they all agreed it's really time for us to go into a higher gear and make that state of Israel a reality again. This put into motion many things that literally eventually brought the land of Israel into existence. Dr. Theodor Herzl is the visionary, at least that's how he's counted in Israel, the visionary that made the state of Israel happen. Mind you, there were many different elements, but it had to start somewhere. And he is the one that really pushed it in the direction of establishing a state. He came to the land of Israel. This is him. He came to the land of Israel. You see the picture on the right, how he was dressed? He wanted to meet Turkish governors that controlled the land of Israel. The Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, controlled the land of Israel at that point for about 400 years. And he wanted to negotiate with them, maybe buy land. This is in addition to what those pioneers that came, they were buying land from the absentee landowner that were in Constantinople, Turkey. They owned the land, but they didn't really live on the land. They didn't lease or rent the land because in the north it was mostly swamp, therefore malaria, and in the south it was mostly dry, no water, desert-like condition. So those Jews started to buy land from those absentee owners. Theodor Herzl is the one that coined the phrase "Im tirtzu enzo agada." If you want it, the land of Israel, it's not a dream. It's not a fairy tale. You can have it. And all this negotiation, by the way, with the Turkish Empire, didn't really go anywhere, sadly. So nothing happened with that. And then World War I happened. 1917, the British Empire defeats the Ottoman Empire and conquer all the land that the Ottoman Empire controlled for about 400 years, including the land of Israel. Lord Balfour was the foreign minister of the British Empire, and he issued what's called the Balfour Declaration that says that the Jewish people are entitled to a Jewish homeland in the land of Israel. The leader of the Yishuv, the pre-independent Israel leadership of the land of Israel, saw it as a de facto stamp of approval that the land of Israel will be established. Sadly, this declaration by the foreign minister of the empire, the British Empire, meant nothing on a day-to-day basis. In fact, in 1939, the British Empire reversed it and not only did not push toward the establishment of a Jewish homeland for the Jews in the land of Israel, but actually even stopped migration into Israel. And that was really bad because people needed to come to continue building the country. So more kibbutzim, more cities, more moshavim, more communities will be established. As the state of Israel was at the time, as the land of Israel was at the time, was really very fragmented. Concentration of people living in here and concentration of people living in there. There was no contiguous state of Israel as we know it today. There was no freeway that you can get in as you drive from one side to the next. You see communities left and right. They were very separated. Very separated also meant they were not well protected. And so something had to be done about this. On one hand, you have the one-sided approach of the British Empire. On another hand, you have all kinds of atrocities by the Arabs. The Arabs on the land and the Arabs from the neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, Lebanon would even come at night and steal initially animals, farm animals, or produce or grain. Later on, they started to kill people in addition to stealing. And the Yishuv decided there's something they have to do about it. And something was done about it. In 1920, the Yishuv created what they call Agana. It's a paramilitary organization. Agana means defense. And just like its name, that was the purpose of it. The purpose of that organization was to defend those communities, those kibbutzim and moshavim that was very separated from other major population area, from all those people that would come, either from Arab village nearby or across the border. They called them fedayun, those little former term for terrorists. They would come across and they would steal, and later they started to kill. As those nightly practically things became more and more frequent in more and more communities, people realized that something has to be done. The Agana, the defense, was primary defense. They were sitting and waiting. But on occasion, there would be intelligence, there would be information that says, people from this village, Arab village nearby, a couple of miles away, is about to come tonight, and their plan is to kill people, not just to steal sheep and cattle. And yet, the Agana will sit in defensive posture, waiting for them. They would build wall around the kibbutz or fence around the kibbutz. And the people got tired of it. they decided that something else has to be done. It wasn't until 1941, 21 years later, that the Haganah, the defense organization, this paramilitary organization, created another unit within it called the Palmach, Plugot Machatz, strike force or strike brigade. And their purpose was, first of all, they were better trained, they had better military equipment, and their purpose was not just defense, but also offense. If they knew based upon intelligence there's something is coming tonight, they would go and they do preemptive strike. In Judaism, I don't think I need to tell you, the rule is akam leorgecha, ashkem leorgo. Somebody is planning to wake up and kill you, wake up early and kill him. It's considered self-defense, preemptive strike. But not everybody was happy with the Haganah, or what later became the Palmach. Some people decided we need to do more. One of those people we all knew later as Menachem Begin, that became a prime minister of Israel, is the one that signed the peace agreement with Egypt. And he created the Etzel, Irgun Tzioni Lochem, Fighting Zionist Organization. They, 1931, by the way, about 11 years after the Haganah was established, and 10 years before the Palmach was established. Some scholars said that Palmach, what the Haganah established 10 years after Etzel, was basically in reaction to the Etzel, because Etzel started to score good points, but not among everybody. Etzel was good not just at defense, but at offense. And they did not go only after the Arabs. For the first time, they started to go after the British. The British Empire controlled the land of Israel. They often caught Jews that were involved in defense or whatever other activities. They would put them in jail and they would hang them. And the Etzel said, our focus of defense only and defending only against the Arabs and not doing anything to the British is not good anymore. So they started to go after the British too. This was not very popular in the land of Israel. There were some Jews that felt that the Etzel is basically a road bump for the British to leave the country. Say, as long as they're attacking the British will have an excuse to stay longer. So in addition to the Brits looking after the Etzel members, they never looked after the Haganah because the Haganah was defense. In addition to the British looking after the Etzel, some Jews were looking to turn in Etzel. That was not a pretty time in Israel, that some Jews will literally turn in other Jews that were members of the Etzel. Because again, they felt that there are a hindrance to the establishment of the state of Israel. There were many people that supported the Etzel because they figured, why should we give carte blanche to the British that hang Jews? And then there were some people within the Etzel that didn't think that what the Etzel is doing is enough. They said, we shouldn't just attack the British in the land of Israel, we should attack them wherever they are. There were British soldiers in Egypt, we should go and attack them there. We should do whatever we can to hit the British, primarily the British, although they attacked the Arabs too, that were attacking often and killing Jews often, but they attacked primarily the British Empire. The Lechi is Lochamei Cherut Israel, freedom fighter of Israel. The second head of this organization, Yitzhak Shamir, also at one point became prime minister of Israel in the early 90s. But the first one was Yair Stern. The British and some of the Jews living in the land of Israel called this organization the Stern Gang. You know, we think in language. And so when you give a name to an organization that's called Freedom Fighter of Israel, and you call it the Stern Gang, then people start to think of it as a gang rather than freedom fighters. Those people were really hunted hard by the British, and they were mostly in hiding. They were also turned in left and right by the Jews. And so there was a very, very small number and a bunch of collaborators. The collaborators were really not members, but if there was a member within a community, they would help by reporting what they saw, hiding, helping, sheltering those people. But there were very few. And whenever they caught, the British usually killed them on sight. It's not often they even brought them to trial. This Lehi was established in 1940. We're getting very close to 1948 when the land of Israel happened. And this is, I think, a time for me to switch away from what happens in the land of Israel and go into what happened in Europe. Today is Yom HaShoah. And I was thinking, what can I talk about that you have not heard already about Yom HaShoah? I don't need to repeat 6 million. I don't need to repeat Auschwitz and Treblinka and Dachau and Bergen-Belsen and on and on. I don't need to talk about Majdanek or the execution in the forest of Lithuania. I was thinking, I want to talk about something that honor the memory of the Shoah, but at the same time is along the line of the establishment of the state of Israel. And it clicked in my head what I need to talk about. Some years back, I don't remember, maybe even 5 or more years ago, I read a book by Rabbi Naomi Levy called Einstein and the Rabbi. Rabbi Marcus, Samuel Marcus, lost an 11-year-old son to polio. He was devastated by it. He wrote a letter to Albert Einstein, world-renowned physicist, to seek some comfort, to seek some solace from him. It really seemed odd to me at the beginning, reading the book, that a rabbi that seemingly would have access to philosopher and other rabbis is asking a physicist for some kind of an explanation. Einstein wrote back to him a short letter with 4 sentences. Essentially, he was telling him, he was using, by the way, terms like time and space. He's a physicist, right? But Einstein is telling Rabbi Marcus that when we see ourselves as part of the whole, it gives us comfort. It's not Einstein original. Rabbi Hillel said that, but that's for another day. So we all know who Albert Einstein was. Let me tell you a little bit about Rabbi Marcus, so you can see how that's connected to the land of Israel. Rabbi Dr. Samuel Marcus fought with the US Army during World War II. He was on the beaches of Normandy, tending to the wounded and mortally wounded. And he was also one of the first American soldiers to enter Buchenwald. It's a camp, concentration camp in Eastern Europe, kind of next to the border of what used to be Czechoslovakia. Eisenhower also entered this camp, and Eisenhower ordered that pictures will be taken. So in the future, if people deny what happens there, there'll be proof. Eisenhower also went to the order that the German people from the nearest community will come so they can see for themselves what they and their own people did at this camp. 350,000 people went through Buchenwald. It was mostly a work camp, which is euphemism for slave labor. And about 60,000 were killed by disease, by the whim of the guards because they were happy or sad or drunk or whatever and decided to kill because they couldn't work anymore, because they were starved to death. So Rabbi Dr. Samuel Marcus comes into this camp, and to his amazement, he finds 904 children mostly teenagers, but few much younger children. And I want to pick up just 3 or 4 of them and tell you some of the stories. We found this 16-year-old boy named Eliezer. This boy grew up to be who we know as Elie Wiesel, the 1986 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, the one that wrote books like Night and Dawn that introduced us, humanity really, to the horror of the Holocaust. The person that I had the honor and pleasure of seeing at Chapman University, an amazing person. May his memory be a blessing. He was one of those 904 children that Rabbi Marcus found. In the pit, under the latrine, hear me again, in the pit, under the latrine, Rabbi Marcus found a 7-year-old named Lulek. That was his nickname. After he rinsed him to get all the stuff that was on him, he asked him in Yiddish, "How old are you?" And Lulek said, "What difference does it make? Besides, I'm older than you." So the 35-year-old doctor, Rabbi Marcus, said, "Why do you think you're older than I am?" And the 7-year-old Lulek said, "Because I saw you crying when you were talking to the other kids, and I don't cry anymore." This 7-year-old Lulek grew up to be Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, the chief rabbi of the Jewish state of Israel. His son now is the chief Ashkenazic rabbi of the state of Israel. After a short time inside Buchenwald, Rabbi Marcus decided to move all the children away from this camp, and he moved them to a nearby town, to a building, and he established what he called Kibbutz Buchenwald Achshara, which means preparation for Kibbutz Buchenwald. The goal was to nurse them back to life first, to educate them, to feed them, to find them a home, to find a relative, close or distant relative, and to put them somewhere. And if you can't find something, put them in an orphanage. He rode on a train from this kibbutz in eastern Germany to France, to an orphanage in France. One of those kids on this train was Henry Oster, Oster, later an eye doctor in Los Angeles. Henry Oster said that Rabbi Marcus was their Moses. He took them out of slavery, he took care of them, and he brought them to a promised land.
Mike, I'm sorry, I'm just going to step in. If you can you not share so we can see a bigger version of you as you're talking now, if we're not using your slide presentation?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah. Let me see. How do I get rid of this?
You could do like a stop share.
Oh, there is such a thing?
Yeah. At the very top, it should say stop share. No.
I don't see it, but
Okay.
let me get out of it because I can do without.
I think that it'll be just not, you're doing such good teaching. I want people to see.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Wow, now I see a lot of people. So Henry Oster compared Rabbi Marcus to Moses. The word of this kibbutz Buchenwald in eastern Germany, started to spread among the Jewish organization and non-Jewish organization that were taking care of orphans. So they even sent some kids from other camps in Poland and other places to this place. Everybody heard about Rabbi Marcus and what he's doing there. And now he's educating them, he's placing them in home. And those that he couldn't do anything with, he taught how to be farmers of all things. One of those kids that was sent to the camp from Poland, her name was Ruth. She was 17-year-old. She did not speak a word. Maybe she was shocked because she lost her entire family in the Holocaust. Maybe because she suffered during the time she was in the camps, maybe all of the above. She didn't speak. But many years later, the world got to know Ruth as Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the world-renowned sex therapist. This is a girl that literally came to Kibbutz Buchenwald under the direction of Rabbi Marcus. After Rabbi Marcus placed people, young boys and girls with family, distant relative, orphanage, he still had 80 kids that he couldn't find anybody. He couldn't find a place for. At the time, the British Empire did not allow any Jews, not even Holocaust survivor, to enter the land of Israel. So Rabbi Marcus, with pressure from the US Army, managed to get 80 visas for those 80 kids and bring them to the land of Israel. They got on an ocean vessel and sailed to the land of Israel. They arrived at the port of Haifa on Rosh Hashanah Eve. Rabbi Marcus held service on the upper deck of that ship on Rosh Hashanah Eve. Ruth Westheimer was one of the kids on this vessel also. They came into the land of Israel. They established a kibbutz not far from the center of Israel, kind of not far between Ramle and Rehovot, called Kibbutz Buchenwald, just like the kibbutz they had when they lived in Eastern Germany in that small community outside the Buchenwald concentration camp. They had help from other kibbutzim and other advisors. Although they learned under the direction of Rabbi Marcus how to be farmers, they needed help. And so they got that help and they established that kibbutz. 80 of them established kibbutz. Some of them at this point are out of teenage years and already 19 and 20-year-old. And they had help from others. So they managed to be an independent kibbutz. A few years later, those same members of the kibbutz decided to change the name of the kibbutz. One, they wanted to erase the name of Buchenwald, which is associated with the Holocaust, today's Yom HaShoah, from the name. They didn't want that name in the land of Israel. And two, they wanted to honor Enzo Sereni and his son, Daniel Sereni, both of them paratrooper that paid the ultimate price in the defense of Israel. So they changed the name from Kibbutz Buchenwald to Kibbutz Netzer Sireni, the honor, the memory of Sireni, the father and son that gave their life in defense of Israel. Everywhere you look in Israel, every city, every kibbutz, every moshav is somehow stained with blood, the people that had to defend it. I'll tell you in a really sad twist of fate. Kibbutz Netzer Sireni, that I told you is in the center of Israel, kind of between Ramle and Rehovot, is sharing a high school with several moshavim nearby. There are four moshavim and two kibbutzim that share that same high school. Their kids go to that high school. On October 7, 10 of the graduates of this high school were murdered at the Nova Music Festival that was on the fence with Gaza. And in the subsequent war that started, 10 graduates of this high school were killed in the war. During the first 6 months after October 7, every sermon I have given, I've dedicated to the memory of someone that was profoundly impacted or paid the ultimate price in the defense of Israel and in the atrocities of October 7 and the subsequent war. I spoke with my congregation about the number 10, the 10th soldiers that was killed in the subsequent war that followed October 7, that is a graduate of this high school. I can't even begin to imagine what this high school is like nowadays. 10 graduates were murdered in a peaceful music festival, and 10 graduates were killed since in the war. This is how things go in the land of Israel. In Israel, the sting and the honey, advash ve'oketz, they come together. Sad things and happy things happen together. It's not a coincidence that Yom HaZikaron, the memorial day for soldiers and victims of terror, ends one moment before the celebration of Israel independence begins. So it's one day of memory and sad music and going to cemeteries. And as soon as that ends, a day of celebration begins. Advash ve'oketz, the honey and the sting. Let me go back now to what we started with a chain of events that led to the establishment of the State of Israel. November 29, 1947, the UN, which I don't give much credence to, nevertheless, the UN voted on the partition plan. The partition plan was basically to take the land of Israel, mostly as we know it today, and divide it into an Arab land, Arab state, and a Jewish state. If you were to look at the map, if I was to share it, it looks like a cottage cheese, a section here, a section here, more like a Swiss cheese, really, but nothing to do with Swiss peace war. It was fragmented. There were sections that were not even contiguous. There would be a separation in which a bridge or a road will have to be built, fence to be erected. The Jews accepted it. The Arabs did not. And so the people in the land of Israel, the Yishuv, the organizations, the Jews, realize they don't accept it. That means war is coming. The British are leaving. The big equalizer is getting away, and war will start. So we have to defend ourselves. Sad and as difficult as it was, those four paramilitary organizations I spoke about, the Haganah, Palmach, Etzel, and Lehi, decided together we stand, divided we fall. They have to stand together. It wasn't all hunky-dory. There was some time that Haganah was shooting at Etzel. There was a vessel that came with weapon that Etzel ordered before, and the Haganah shot it right off the coast of Tel Aviv and sunk it to the bottom of the sea. So people were killed too. It wasn't always fun, but Jews usually do not fight Jews. They stood together to fight against the Arab. There were only 600,000 Jews at the time in Israel, 1948. And pretty much every one of them, in one capacity or another, had to participate in this war, whether filling sack with sand or holding a weapon and fighting, whether raising fund or bringing food to the soldiers. Whatever it took, 600,000 people got involved in this war. And sadly, 6,000 of them were killed. 1% of the population. Can you imagine a war today in which 3.5 million Americans getting killed? This is what happened. 1% of the total number of Jews were killed during that war. And that brought us to May 14 on the Gregorian calendar, 1948, or if you want, on the Hebrew calendar, the 5th day of the month of ER, the 8th month of the year, 5 of 8. May 14, the British left. David Ben-Gurion and some of the leaders of the issue got together. They announced independent Israel. And after 2,000 years, almost, of Jews being in exile, 1,900 years almost to the day, the third Commonwealth of Israel was established. The third Commonwealth of Israel is the independent state of Israel today. Rabbi Tilchin asked to finish a little early. I'm willing to stay longer for question and answer, but first I want to pass it on to Rabbi Tilchin because you wanted to do something in honor of Yom HaShoah.
Thank you. First of all, Mike, I've known you for close to 20 years, and I've, you know, always appreciated um, the special gifts that you bring to your religious communities. You really are a master teacher. And I can't thank you enough for being with us. I just
Thank
wanted
you.
before we I wanted to do an El Male for the 6 million. Um, and I just want to let you know that two things were put in the chat because Rabbi Mike actually touched upon many, many different things today in his very sort of concise, but he had to do it quickly, a survey of history. Uh, we uh, we offered a class about a year ago with Rabbi Daniel Levine, who's also another teacher in our community, who is really quite stunning in his presentation. He offered a course on the history of different Zionisms. Some of the people that were part of that, Rabbi Mike mentioned today. So Madalena put a link in the chat to those recorded lectures on our YouTube channels. I think many of you will find them very, very interesting, and anything with Rabbi Daniel is worthwhile. I also wanted to say, I know that many people on with us today are regular ALI attendees and support this program. If you're new to ALI and feel moved to make these ongoing and open programs possible, I also put a link in the chat for you to connect with us and get on our regular list and become part of the ALI family. And I'm, delighted that Mike is now part of our regular rotation of scholars. And before we do our Q&A, and we can leave the room open, this is not, we don't have to go. I just wanted to share with you that I lit this is my Yom HaShoah candle, and I invite you to rise as we do an El Male for the 6 million. And I'm keeping in mind, as Rabbi Mike pointed out, just that it's ever present, is I think the best way to say that. El Male Rachamim Shofein Bamromi Hametzeh Menocha Nechona Tachat Kanafei Shchina B'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakiamatilim Et Nishmat Kol Achenu B'nei Yisrael Anashim Nashim B'tach Shenitbechu V'shenechneku V'shenisrefu V'shenahergu V'gan Eden Tehi Menuchatam Anabal Harachamim Hastirem Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Utzror B'tzror Achayim Et Nishmotehem Adonai Hu Nachalatam V'yanuchu V'shalom Al Mishkevotehem V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the souls of all of our brethren, men, women, children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. May their memories endure, inspiring truth and loyalty in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace, now and always. May they be a guiding light for each and every person who understands the gravity of their loss. And we all say, Amen. And yeah, so I'm gonna I'm going to turn this back over to Rabbi Mymon. This is this class was recorded. It'll also be it's live streamed on our Facebook. He'll be back with us again next week, and we're going to learn sort of about Yom HaZikaron, sort of a deeper dive into a little bit about what Mike touched upon today. And no one actually brings us into Yom HaZikaron better than Rabbi Mymon. And then on the 20th of May, Rabbi Lazar is in Israel right now, his first visit. You know, he raised his family of 5 there, and he's going to do a live presentation from Israel. It'll be nighttime there, but on May 20th, sort of talking about the country that he is getting reacquainted with. And of course, he has several children still there and grandchildren. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that as well. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. May we all be comforted by the fact that Klal Yisrael has each other, and may the state of Israel be blessed in safety, and please God go from strength to strength.
Amen. Happy to take questions, comments. Yeah, Linda, please unmute.
I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, that was an amazing presentation and so informative. And I always appreciate your deep knowledge of our people, of the land of Israel, and just what you bring to us weekly and anytime we encounter you. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. As I was looking at you, I noticed Cantor Asher Tilchin here with us. It's quite an honor. I know he looks like he's 50 years old, which kind of goes to prove you're never too old to learn something. We all learn something every day. But it's wonderful to see you, Cantor Tilchin. You're muted. I can't hear what you say, but I'm grateful for you to be here with us.
I'm very, very grateful to be here.
Thank you very much.
Very moving and very moving. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today for the last hour and 5 minutes or so. I know we went a little bit beyond because of the Yom HaShoah presentation and the El Maleh Rachamim, but I appreciate it. Next week on Monday at this time at 9:30 our time on the West Coast, Sylvia's 12:30, I think, right, Sylvia?
Yes.
It'll be not really another segment of it, but if you want, because Yom HaZikaron has to do with remembering the soldiers that gave their life in the defense of Israel and the victim of terror, I was thinking to share with you some personal stories. My dad fought 4 wars. I only fought 1. I have 2 brothers that also served in the military and were involved in wars. And so there are some stories that I can share really to kind of capture the day, what it takes to defend a country. And a war is a collection of small battles, and it's also a collection of many, many stories for each and every soldier. Every woman and every man that is in uniform and fighting has stories to tell. And I wanted to share some of those stories with you, and I hope you can join us. And with that, I wish you all a great day and a great week, and God's blessing. Be well.
Thank you, Rabbi. This is amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi
Thank
Marsha.
you.
Moshe's gone. And thank you for bringing us closer together as a community. It's always so important. Amazing thing.
Thanks.